Good evening and a very warm welcome to the first edition of the ACETECH Masterclass in association with Caracol. Trust all of you are doing well and hope all your families are staying safe. On behalf of ABEC Exhibitions and Conferences Private Limited and the IT Group, it's my privilege to have you at this meet. Our masterclass aims at providing the industry with in-depth technical knowledge shared by the leading green architects, consultants, and speakers from India. We focus on their leadership as well as key segments covering green and sustainability. Today's session will be focusing on the theme that is new trends in construction ecosystem and sustainability. Joining us on a session today are Anish Kardian, our moderator. He is the Executive Director at CBRE. Sanjay Seth, he is the Senior Director at Terry and the CEO at Griha. Prashant Dhawan, he is the co-founder of Biomimicry India. Mr. Shabir Kachwala, Senior Vice President, K. Raheja Corp. Joining us later will be Ashok Lal, as he's having some technical difficulties. And we have Mr. Azam Javed. He's the CEO of Caracol, India and Gulf region. Also, a quick brief on our associate partners, Caracol. They are headquartered out of Italy and are based all over the globe. Today, Caracol is the first company in the world to offer comprehensive packages of green building materials and services to build healthy homes that live in harmony with the environment. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over the platform to Anish to take it over.
Thank you so much, Savio and the ACETECH team, and a very, very warm welcome to all the panelists. You're all, I would say, experts and leaders in your field. So it'll be great to have this next 1.5 hours with you all. And of course, to all the participants who joined, thank you so much for taking the time out from a lot of other Zoom sessions that you could have been on. And thanks for being on this Zoom session. So just to start with, the construction industry, in India, there are about 600 million square feet of grade A space, which has been developed in the last 20, 25 years. And that's just the grade A. There's huge amount of space. So that's what the construction industry has done. Another 40 million is kind of added every year. It's employing about 35 to 40 million people directly, indirectly. But construction is just not, building the brick and mortar. There's interiors, there's so many other aspects to construction. So it's a very, very large industry. And in the current times of Corona, COVID, there's been a pause in the construction. But I think this is a time to reflect and see how we can maybe transform, bring in new ideas. And it's kind of a forced shake-up for all of us in the construction sector to see how we can do things differently in the new normal, so to say. And the building sector itself, its impact on sustainability and our globe is phenomenal. Before we all started, we were discussing this with the panelists as well. 1/3 of all the waste that is generated in any environment is because of construction. If you see in all cities, construction debris is all over. There's a big problem that municipalities are dealing with. The greenhouse gas emissions, about 10 to 11% of that is because of the construction activities. So it's very timely that we are discussing the new ecosystem of construction and what are the impact it'll have on sustainability, or sustainability, how it can be enhanced through the new technologies. And we've got a very, very eminent panel to discuss on this. So before we start with the deliberations, I would like to just hand over to Azam to just share a quick intro about his firm, because of course there's sponsors, but more importantly, I think their focus is, in fact, the tagline says a green building company. So hand it over to Azam, please, to just start the discussions.
Thank you so much, Anish. So again, I would also extend a very warm welcome to all the participants who have taken time out today and are part of this webinar. Hope all of you are doing fine and are safe. So I'm trying to share a presentation. Anish, if you can just give me a go ahead once it goes live.
Sure. Not yet. Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yes, we can see the presentation. Yes, we can see that.
Great, awesome. So I will not take so much time because I know what everyone else is waiting for is a very interesting and inspiring discussion on the topic, where definitely there are very many valuable input that are going to be coming across the session. So let me tell you a little bit about the company. Ecological is a green building company which is based in a region of north of Italy, in a city called Sassuolo, which is pretty much the ceramic headquarter of of the world. So a lot of important companies which does ceramic and porcelain tile manufacturing together with with the sanitary fittings are actually based in this area. So more than 50 years ago, we were actually established or founded in a little garage, and we started to manufacture what back then was something very unimaginable. Single component adhesive for ceramic and porcelain tile. From in the last 50 years, we have come really a long way, and today we are, we provide a comprehensive range of green building solutions, which is not only adhesives and grouts for the ceramic tile industry, but it encompasses many different sub-segments of construction chemical, including concrete repair mortars, complete range of waterproofing for superstructures, thermal insulation systems, naturally breathable mortars and paints, seismic retrofitting systems, epoxy polyurethane, wood floors, so on and so forth. So overall, we have 18 operative companies all across the globe. We are very strong in Europe, and apart from Europe, we have presence in North and South America, and Asia as well, with subsidiaries in the Gulf region and India. So India happened to us in 2006, and it's one of the 17 manufacturing facility that we have. Our plant is based in Vadodara, and the company opened with a corporate headquarters in Mumbai. And today we have more than 18 branches spanning the entire nation, and through which we actually service people, our customers, people like you, so our architects, interior designers, builders, with a massive network of distribution, which encompasses more than 600 plus channel partners. Every year we service more than 150,000 plus construction industry professionals. So we said Ecological, I introduced Ecological by saying we are a green building company. So I would like to just explain what are the fundamentals of our existence and what are the core pillars that we have when it comes to going about our business and developing our products, right? So the first and foremost is environmental sustainability. So more than 5% of our revenue every year is invested back into research and development, and all this research into new materials, new product or technology actually take place by making use of materials which are sustainable and can have low environmental impact on one side, and also low impact on the health of the people. So the second very important pillar is well-being, and so we talk a lot about the well-being of the end user, but there is also an intermediate user. So in construction, as we see, we have a very important stakeholder, which are applicators, who are day in, day out, and constantly exposed to harmful emissions if they're not using the right material. So we build products, technologies which also minimizes the impact on health of the people who are actually applying our products, and not only the one who will then actually go and inhabit in the homes where these products are used. Last but not the least, so it is thought that it is very difficult to build high-tech performance when we look at a product development philosophy which is based on low environmental impact and well-being of people, right? So in all the markets that we operate in, we pretty much have products which are class leading and our benchmarks in individual areas of construction chemical. So when we talk about green building, there is of course a lot an organization that has to do in terms of investment into infrastructure capabilities and processes, right? So it's not that one day some organization can wake up and say, today I would like to call myself green. So over a period of time, which encompasses more than 20 years, we have significantly invested in our infrastructure. So this is our Green Lab, which is the headquarter of our R&D based in Italy. And we are actually bringing know-hows and technologies from here also to India. We are in the process of setting up a localized structure, which is like this. And this was made with an investment of more than 15 million euros. So more than 9 specialized research laboratories where we continuously work with new materials, innovative materials, and also work on existing products in order to improve them and make them more and more eco-friendly and people-friendly. So overall, more than 100 researchers work in this facility. Apart from the research investment in the infrastructure, what we have done is also build the system. I'm sure there are many people here more expert than me who will be talking about what is the norm and the rating mechanism in India for the acceptance of construction chemical. But then what we have in the company is was built on based on the European regulatory references, where we defined 9 primary areas, and we use actually these regulatory references coming from Europe in order to define certain limits, whether it comes to the amount of CO2 which will be emitted per kg of the material during the manufacturing of it, how much percentage of the material needs to have a recycled component in it, or what are the distance from which we are bringing in our raw material. So these are some of these parameters. And on the other hand, from the standpoint of what is the solvent content of these material, as opposed to how much VOC is actually emitted to the environment, when we open and mix and apply these materials, whether the material, when it gets discarded in the environment, creates damages the marine or the plant life and so on. So like that, there were 9 parameters with very clear indicators, very clear limits coming from the European norm that were built. And they were then segmented across different categories of construction chemicals, because it's a very broad industry. So we have chemical formulations which change. And what we do actually is, for every single bag, every single formulation, we actually go and characterize those products. And depending upon how many criteria are checked, we give them something that we call as a green building rating. So process is recognized by SGS, and we have a team which works day in, day out on this process in order to improve the existing products and build the new products already with a level of eco rating which is high, more than at least 3. So that's all. The Indian business is primarily focused on adhesives for all sort of ceramic, porcelain, tile. So everything that goes from the mother slab up to the finished floor level is something that we do. Levelers, self-levelers, screed adhesives, and waterproofing of of superstructures. So these are some reference projects. The biggest Starbucks in the world. This was made by reusing a building which was more than 150 years old. Our product were used, for the retrofitting of this building, as well as the application of the final surfaces. This is the Prada headquarters, where also Kerako's material were used for waterproofing and tiling and the facade application. Bosco Verticale is a very awarded building based in Milan, which actually set the trend for vertical gardens. Later to which many buildings were made, with a philosophy of having a vertical garden and an ecosystem within a city. So our products were used there for hardwood systems, for flooring systems. Mumbai Airport. So probably few of you will know that more than 5.5 lakh square feet of Mumbai Airport, which is where we have the departure area, arrival area, duty-free areas, are all done by our adhesives grouts. The same also, we did also Terminal 3 back in time with a similar system. And this is big or small. So like that, there are many references of projects important at national level, institutional, and also commercial that we continue to do. So with that, I would like to pass the ball back to Anish's court for him to take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Anish, before we can go ahead, there's a video on Caracol's Green Lab. I would just like to play that.
Yeah, please go ahead. And good evening to you, Ashokji. Thank you for joining.
What do you, Anish?
Thanks, Xavier. Azam, thanks for sharing this. And I think this really sets the tone for today's discussions. So here is a construction materials company which is highly sustainable. So I think it raises the bar, and the people who are using the materials or the developers, I think will also want to raise their bar as well in terms of sustainable construction. So I think great introduction. Thank you so much. So, just to start our deliberations, I will just start with Ashokji. You've done so much of architecture, and your name and institution in terms of especially residential area. That's where the growth is happening now as well. So, can you share some of your, because you deal across the country, some of the concerns that you are seeing in terms of the way the construction of residential societies is happening, and also some of the technologies that are going into these residential societies, both in the construction as well as in the fit outs and everything. Is that sustainable, or is it impacting the overall sustainability in the name of whatever green building that we're talking about? So just to start the discussion in terms of what are your concerns, what are the worries that you see when you are doing these developments?
Okay, so I think there are two sets of worries that I do see. There is no doubt a terrific hurry to build a lot of housing in the short term, because there's a great shortage and it has to be met very quickly, and that's a commitment at the highest level of governance, right? And in the process, two things have happened. One is that it has been thought that it is advantageous to increase the FSI of building everywhere, just double it, left, right, and center. Small town, big town, out in the fields, in the heart of the city, doesn't matter, just double it. That's one thing that has happened. The second thing that has happened is that we have tried to see if we can find technologies which can give us very quick building at a rapid construction technologies. And for that, there was a big effort to bring in technologies from all over the world and to make a selection of maybe 5 or 6 that looked to be more promising. And I don't exactly know what the criteria were for them to be promising, but those are the ones that are now being considered to be the ones that should be tried out. So these are the two things that have happened. The implication of the first one is, and this is something that came out of research that we did by comparing different kinds of housing building from low 4 or 5 stories high to 6 or 7 stories high up to 12 stories plus. And what we discovered was that no matter what you do, the embodied energy, the consumption of steel and concrete, as you go taller and taller, especially if you're in an earthquake zone, that increases phenomenally. So compared to 4 or 5 stories high building, where you might be consuming 2.5 to 3, maximum 3 kgs per square foot of delivered floor area, by the time you've gone to 10, 12 stories high, that 3 kgs have gone up to 5.5 kgs. Now, that much increase in steel intensity is not going in the direction of lowering your carbon footprint with development. It is going in the opposite direction. And that is entirely because of the height of construction. Wind loads, gravity resistance, and earthquake loads. And there are many other reasons why this is proving to be. Operational energy costs are much higher because pumping and lifts, etc., become higher. So that's one. The second thing is that in selection of some of these technologies, I don't think we have so far applied the test of thermal comfort and climate conscious design. We have not yet applied that test. So we are seeing more and more uptake of all concrete, 12 centimeter, 15 centimeter, 17 centimeter thick external walls that go up several stories. They envelop the entire building, even the inside walls are all concrete. So consumption of steel goes up, and the thermal property of concrete, especially when you're talking about regions which are very hot or even composite regions, not such a big problem in the warm, humid region, but still there too. Or in Tamil Nadu, we've analyzed it. It really makes a huge difference. So you can see that use of concrete, because it happens to be the quicker way to build, not because it is the more environmentally effective way to build, is leading us to more uncomfortable buildings. And as you see, increasing temperatures, especially peak temperatures in cities in the coming decade or so because of climate warming, your demand for air conditioning is going to accelerate like anything. And as pockets become a little fuller, people will spend on air conditioning. So here, the selection of technology must go through the test of whether it is appropriate from a climatic point of view. So these are the two concerns. And I feel we need to inform everybody, have a really good technical discussion, and to find the alternatives.
No, it's always good to hear your views because you're really passionate about sustainability. And before I go to Prashant on this same thing, Sanjay, you had also mentioned briefly when you started this session, before we started, about the same aspect about, the way building development is happening, and also quick comments or inputs in terms of what Ashokji has said.
Yeah, so
especially about the energy cost, and you mentioned about the International Energy Association.
Yeah. So actually, Ashok and Professor Ashok Lal and me were together on that discussion the other day when we were talking about thermal comforts and how important it is to be ensuring that the way we are constructing is really not sustainable, and we need to somehow make the necessary corrections that need to be brought in. And I think what Ashok Lalji just said about building materials playing a very important role. There is very little or very fragmented information about building materials available in the public domain or to the design professionals and to the end users. And that's, I think, where we need to really provide information through testing, through making sure that we have enough labs in the country which carry out such tests, provide information out in the public domain, in the open source, for the benefit of building practitioners so that they can then go and convince their clients into why it is necessary to be choosing the right material when they go in for, constructions and all of that. So I think this is really an important area, and we cannot go, if we go wrong in this area, we are going to make a mess of what we are doing right now. And the amount, we've heard this, I think, on many other panels as well as discussions, that much of the infrastructure is yet to be put in place. And that gives us a huge amount of opportunity, and we should not lose this opportunity to make sure that we go the correct path. Yeah. So I think, yeah.
And just to take on this, because there is a concern about the way we are growing, the way we are constructing, but there's a very new and interesting, I would say, approach, which is biomimicry. And Prashant, he's the co-founder of Biomimicry India. So I'll just request Prashant to quickly give an overview of biomimicry as a subject, because it is new to me. I'm sure many people would know about it, but it definitely is new to me, and I'm sure same with the more than 200 plus delegates that we have. So it'll be great if you could just share a quick overview, and then we can talk about how it can help in sustainable construction.
Sure. So thank you, Anish, and my apologies to all the co-panelists. A lot of the things I am saying more for the 200 participants who might not have heard about biomimicry. So I'll use a presentation to talk about biomimicry. And biomimicry, while I understand all of us are in the everyday urgencies of getting things done, somewhere how to introduce a new approach is a challenge where I would seek everybody's help, that we can't just say that we are so preoccupied with the urgencies of meeting demand that the investment into new futures is not happening. This is a challenge which I feel we have, and we have to grab the bull by the horn. So let me just share my screen and so can you see the screen? Can somebody?
Yes, you can, and we can see the COVID is up in front.
Yeah, I thought, let me not lose this moment and every day. So let's acknowledge and honor the point. It's 15th October and we are in the middle of a global pandemic. And picking up from what Anish said, this is a collective pause, unprecedented. I don't think we ever thought we'll come up with something like this, but let's acknowledge the uniqueness of our situation. And I'll just take three questions. One is, what is biomimicry? Why now? Is it just a new fashion accessory? It will go away, a fancy word. And the more important thing, which I think most of you must be thinking, what's in it for the construction industry and what's in it for me? So let's just take a step back, 1 million feet view, that this was the pre-COVID world. We were all living almost like caterpillars. It's the consumption-driven economy. Everybody is in a big race to become fat. And in all humility, I think we had started believing that we have to shape our environment, and more we have to shape our society so that it can fit in and nourish the economy. Isn't it true? Economy, which I think we have forgotten, we created it, a tool or a servant had become our master. And more, I still think we all believe that that's a master we can't stop serving. But how quickly we've paused our economy and social systems. Why? Because suddenly life is more important. I don't want to lose out on this moment that we have suddenly realized that you can stop any system, but you cannot stop life. I want a moment. I do understand the urgencies of getting things done, but it's important to at least spend 1% of our time realizing that the real model that will really sustainable is that we shape our economy so that it serves the society, and we shape the society that it serves the ecology. That's the simple format. We can continue to be brilliant in parts, but together these parts will be cacophonous until we get the framework right. So that's the basis of biomimicry, that if you get the framework right, then everything starts coming together. And once Gandhi said, sometimes speed is not relevant if you're in the wrong direction. So if you are in a bus and it's headed for the ditch and we are fighting for the window seat, might not be a great idea for too long. So I think and while I'm saying this, I also want to address what is happening in the business schools, because a lot of us, I think, feel that all this is good, but bhai, it is all driven by economic. You know, at the college level, at the academic level, Stanford, Harvard, now even businesses started saying that we need to change the purpose of business. It will take time. It might take 10, 20, 30 years, but it started happening. Earlier, we had the concept of philanthropy, earn the way you want, give something to the society. Then government started saying, nahi bhai, mandatory compliance, corporate social responsibility. But now they are saying the purpose of business itself should be intrinsic to the health of the planet. This is different from the health of stakeholders alone. This is different from the health of just human society. The word, the health of the planet has started coming in. And we all know that it starts from academics in Harvard, Stanford, slowly it becomes policy. So if we want to be ready for the future, why I'm saying this, because I know at the back of our minds, all of us are saying, yes, sab theek hai, you know, all this is fine. Is it? So this has started happening. So they are saying that the purpose of business itself needs to change. So how we need to revisit the common purpose. And what I would suppose is that the common purpose here is not just human-centered. We spent the last 20 years saying human-centered. It's not just economy-centered. It's not just technology-centered. It's life-centered. Life means all of life. And I think this COVID moment is an excellent moment to remind us that it's eventually life. If life is working, then everything is in service of life. But the question is, how do we do that? And interestingly, in biomimicry, there is only one line design brief. The design brief of nature is create conditions conducive to life, all life, not just human life. And translating this brief into economic policies, construction policies, into measurable, that's what biomimicry does. It brings a coherent whole to an otherwise fragmented industry, which is excelling in parts, but doesn't know how to come together. So the essential question is, how do we design products, processes, and systems that create conditions conducive to life, all life? So we actually, in biomimicry, we say, let's ask nature. And why do we ask nature? We are not the first living system to inhabit this planet. Now, I don't have the time, but I welcome all the participants. If they are interested, they can find out that living systems have been operating in the same operating conditions. There are problems of thermoregulations, energy, water management. All these problems are not new to our species. 3.8 billion years, species have been managing these problems without spoiling the Earth's ecosystem. You know, if you go to a forest, you don't find any waste. Waste is a human invention. So a lot of these things, unfortunately, they've not been in our industrial curriculum. And now we are beginning to find out that if we look that how nature is managing it, we might prevent ourselves from unintended consequences. Nobody is really deliberately wanting to ruin environment. It's just that we don't know. So if you don't know, look at 3.8 billion years of experimentation. Our tenure on Earth is only 200,000 years. And out of that, the Industrial Revolution is only 200 years. So there's a very high risk of unintended consequences. So biomimicry is a structured method-based subject where you have parameters, tools, and ways where we also look at nature. Besides looking at human technologies, we also look at nature. And the most important thing is it is place-based. You know, often you must have heard, and we also, let's create place-based development. What does that even mean? I'll be very honest, you know, it means that on the day of the meeting, who was most eloquent, who was the most flamboyant, that chap wins the day. I think that's a very strange way of winning how the land develops. Does the land have a voice? It does. Till now, we didn't have the method and tools. In biomimicry, we have a system called Genius of Place, where we learn from the other living systems which have been surviving on land to create those parameters, and then we measure against that. So I don't have the time, but I just want to provoke you and tell you that this already exists. So what we start doing is we start translating our metrics into nature's benchmark. So like Mentor, instead of saying we'll make the city like Shanghai, why don't you say that we want to make the city like a forest which belongs to this bioregion? It will perform the same functional ecosystem services. Instead of taking a model saying that factory can be like a forest floor, that's a much more appropriate model. The next thing is, how do you create it into measurable outcomes? So those measurable outcomes also are created, but using nature-based and place-based parameters. What it does is it gives you a focus which is not dependent on who's the most brilliant intellect that day, but on the intrinsic reality of that land, which eventually prevents. So what are the emerging trends and shifts in industry? The topic of this webinar. So the emerging trends is, one is the shift from human-centered to life-centered, because humans are part of life. We've just seen that one thing in Wuhan and all of us are closed down. So, so if you're life-centered, then everything will flourish. The question is, how do you do that? So what is happening in various things? One is there is a lot of debate happening in the way our accounting standards are, the way we look at, how profits and losses. In that, there is no value to the oxygen produced by plants, zero. So if you damage it, there's no. Now there are new accounting standards I want to encourage all of you to, which are called true value accounting, which are forcing that we want to bring about these changes, where there will be hopefully an economic value put to the damage we do to the environment. Why is this important? Because sometimes we feel, how does it matter to me? My client, my entire ecosystem is stuck in the past. But while they're stuck in the past, at least you should know that the future can happen. So there are new accounting systems, and there are already, I'm sure Mr. Seth would know much more than that, the ecological performance standards. So ecological performance standards, now earlier we had building guidelines which would only ask us to, create so much open space, so much. But what about that space was also creating food. It was transpiring water. It was building soil. There are many ecosystem services which go unaccounted and unreplenished. So they are unrestored. So ecological performance standards are a way of measuring and giving you back that you have to restore these ecosystem services which you are touching. So that's another trend that is at least beginning to happen. And more importantly, how is biomimicry affecting design? So we've all heard that the new emerging softwares, you'll call them, I won't read brand names, but they are all being inspired by evolutionary algorithms. And so the role of the designer is changing from a creator to a curator. That has already started happening. So where else is biomimicry? So nature only builds by adding. That's very close to additive manufacturing. So additive manufacturing is another area where a lot of the problems, I know in India, it seems that this might take a bit of while, but imagine if it works out, we can create something at probably half the material and maybe half the time. only the technology is important. So these things are beginning to happen, inspired by nature. And to back it up, there's a lot of research happening in bio-inspired materials. So you've got green chemistry, you've got structural materials, especially composites, which mimic the structures and properties of bone, teeth, because these are porous, only the stress lines. So the dead weight is less. Then there are functional and programmable materials, which sense and respond to acting. So this will end up creating more intelligent building skins, and even phase change. Phase change is like heat. Heat is a passive material which absorbs and becomes liquid. These are passive materials which nature uses to regulate thermoregulation. So a lot of these materials are happening. But unfortunately, there's very little conversation between material science and the architectural community, even the engineering community. So, so that's something I think we need to find ways to create bridges. The other thing that is extremely possible is that if 4D printing and 3D printing, which I'm hoping in the next 5 to 10 years, we have the potential to shift from mass standardization to mass customization. And that's a huge opportunity, because till now, our entire education, entire practice has been by Six Sigma, different. In nature, everything is unique. That's why you and me have Aadhaar. Otherwise, we would all be. And that potential is realized by, I do think that while we go into, the everydayness of urgencies, we need to trigger our imagination, the imagination of our creative professionals, construction professionals, to at least spend 1% of their time to get exposed to these technologies and possibilities. But having said that, it's not simple, and that's the reason it's not happening. It's not simple because this is really a multidisciplinary approach, and most of our industry is very siloed. So we need to find ways to create biologists, engineers, designers, at least somewhere where they can work together, and a certain amount of systems thinking approach is important to really realize biomimicry. But at the end of the day, everybody says, "Ke bhai, all this is fine. What is the one thing we can do?" So I think the one thing we can do is we can start with the promise that we might not have the answers, but let us have one question from today onwards. So like we brush our teeth for 2-3 minutes every day, sometimes one, I would suggest that even if it looks too far, we should have the question. The question is, what would nature do here? It's not necessarily that we have the answer, but I think it's unforgivable if we don't have the question. Just having that question will start us in the search for answer, and eventually what will emerge, I think, would be a place-based, sustainable human habitat. Thank you.
So Prashant, if this was a live event, people are giving you a standing ovation. I think you can see the passion coming in through. But yeah, Prashant, I think very well said. And I think while I was, you said 10 minutes, there was, I didn't want to stop you. And it's really relevant. And what really came to my mind was that why hasn't it been done till now? And I think you answered the question in the end because it's complex. But I remember about many years back, there was a discussion about what carpets to use. There was one carpet manufacturer, he had come with a new design, which the video showed that you have normal carpets in offices. Then they showed the floor of a jungle, where they said even if you take out one piece of foliage underground from anywhere under a tree and put it anywhere else, it just fits in. So that, I think there are so many things we are doing in piecemeal, but as a whole science, I think the time has come, and if maybe in a different way or a different name, but I think we are way behind. We need to really adopt some of these, all of these things to go. And I think I will at least start asking this question about what would nature do. That's a very, very important question for all of us. Thanks for sharing this. And I'll quickly come to, Sanjay. We talked about frameworks, and even Prashant mentioned about it, and Ashok also mentioned about it. And you were with Griha. So Griha has developed this wonderful, rating system, and it's been adopted by the government, and a lot of. It's very interesting and very different from the other rating systems. How would you say, how are the rating systems evolving to measure sustainability in the construction space as a focused approach?
Okay, so let me begin with, the the foundation of the rating system that GRIA was developed was with the principle that what gets measured gets managed. So unless and until you don't start getting into this business of measuring, you will obviously go wrong in every aspect of whether it's your life or, I mean, we discussed, and I think Prashant made a beautiful presentation on what biomimicry and all of that. So again, it's all about measurement and what we are doing and where are we going wrong. So that's the foundation on which we have done. Secondly, you see, every country, for that matter, has come up with various regulations. There are codes and standards and guidelines and all of that. Now, those, we cannot be ignorant of all of those things. After all, they have been put in place with some ideas that why do we need these codes and standards, and the way we construct our buildings, the way we operate our the way we live, all of those things, the standards, and how are we going to grow. So on those principles, these codes and standards have been built. They should become so that has become the basis. All the codes and standards of the government have become the basis of the GRIA rating. So that is the other thing. So if you follow the codes and standards, you don't get a point. But if you do better than them, then you are eligible for something, yes, that you have made a difference. Otherwise, I mean, the codes and standards were there for you to be following. So what's the big deal about why should you deviate from there? So you get a point only if you do better than that. So that's the other bit. Now, thereafter, it's very important that you start evaluating in terms of life cycle cost and life cycle analysis, all these two aspects. And in the GRIA version 2019, we made sure that this is an integral part. And Professor Ashok Lal also talked about embodied energy and all of that. So we are integrating all of this in the rating system, because we need to keep, the rating systems cannot be set in stone. We need to make sure that they keep evolving with time. Now, construction is a very, very dynamic industry, and all my panelists would agree that things are changing, newer technologies are coming, newer materials are being introduced, and each one says, I am better than the others, or, what we did in the past, we are better than that. So there has to be information available in the market to reach out to the end users as well as to the building practitioners. And then there also has to be a system to evaluate those claims. I mean, if you don't evaluate those claims, then again, people will simply, you cannot just go on hearsay. So you need to make sure that so these are the principles on which we have started developing, our rating system, evolving over time, making sure that we follow the trends of the market, keep introducing newer, when we're talking of newer systems of evaluating how these technologies perform, and thereafter evaluate. The last and final bit is, we know that, and I think since I was a regulator with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, we always had this business of auditing. We always say that please audit, and even whether it's our businesses or anything, unless and until you don't go and audit yourself and to see whether the design intent, initially all your building plans and all of that, whether the design intent has been met and whether they are performing to the design intent, that's the key. So these are the principles on which the GRIA rating system has been developed, and we continuously monitor all of these things.
No, and I think that they played a large role in the green movement in India. And there's a huge now awareness about the green, and even customers are asking for it. So I think that credit goes to all the rating agencies for bringing it in. But you brought a very valid point towards the end about auditing and seeing whether the design intent has been put in place or not. And that's where, I'm with CBRE. We manage projects, we run buildings also. There, I think that's where we find the weakness, that you might get a pre-certified gold or a platinum building, but on the ground, when you're actually there as in the projects phase, or even when you're managing buildings, it's a different building altogether if you were to see. So I think there is some need for improvement there. But Ashokji, coming to you in terms of, since you design buildings, and the rating systems also keep on changing so frequently, what is your take on the rating systems as such, and are they keeping up with a pace with the new developments which are coming in into the market, so that the rating systems, you're not kind of bound down by old rating systems, and are they evolving as per you from the design phase?
Yeah, now in India also you have access to four or five different regimes of rating system. You can go to the USGBC, you can go to wellness, you can go to the IGBC, you can go to Griha, and you can go to, what's the one with the...
And GEMS now, a new one.
GEMS, yeah. Then there's the World Bank one, what's it called? It's called something else. That's another one. So there are quite a few regimes. And each one of them is revising and evolving into more complex forms. And I think this is where I have a little bit of an issue. If you look at what's going to happen in terms of construction over the next 2 decades in our part of the world, 80% of it is going to be done by people who are, don't employ sophisticated consultants to do anything. 80% of the work is going to be done like that. Only 20% is going to have the benefit of, high-level consultancy and all the tools and technology that you need for evaluation and measurement and this and that and everything. So I really do think that a simple version, which also Griha has now proposed. I mean, there are simple versions. Even IGBC has been looking at simpler versions for instance, for affordable housing. And there's something called Swagriha, which is supposed to answer the need of a simple builder and a simple user. I think it's very interesting to see how they want to be strategic. The bigger systems, the more evolved, sophisticated systems, like to be comprehensive. They want to be up with everything that's been thought about. Whereas the simpler ones want to be more strategic. What is the simplest way you can make the biggest difference? That's what they focus on. And I think that's where we need to pay more attention. And it is through that regime, simplest way with the biggest results, is where you can enforce and make your building regulations as mandatory. That's, I think, the direction in which we should pull things.
I think this is a great insight, personal learning for me as well. And I agree with you, 80% of the construction that's going to happen will be in the unorganized sector. And I'm sure they don't know about the green ratings, but if you were to bring in some way to make them aware about it, they would not mind adopting these processes. So I think maybe Savio, and I hope, there will be some paper or some kind of learnings we'll take out from this session. And let's see how we can maybe put it across to the powers that be. Sanjay is there, he can take it to the governments as well. But that's an interesting point you brought about, Shobji, thanks for that. But coming back to those 20%, so Shabir, you work with a large developer, and you yourself are leading the sustainability initiatives for a developer. So I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot. Sustainability doesn't come cheap. There is a cost to it. So as a developer, how does the developer match the cost of sustainability versus making products which customers will ultimately buy? And the second place I'm going to put you on a spot is that are customers willing to pay that cost for sustainable construction as well? Because somewhere there will be a cost. Nothing comes free. So sorry for that, but I think you're the best person to answer this question, I think.
Yes, I guess as developers, we have the unenviable task of constructing sustainable buildings across the country. Having said that, as a company, K-Raj Jacob, when we started on this journey way back in 2007, people thought we were crazy in looking at constructing green sustainable buildings. And with a portfolio of almost 1.5 crore of construction being done on a yearly basis in the west and south of the country, we have realized that cost is not the factor which actually should determine whether you're going to look at constructing green buildings or whether you're going to look at constructing a non-green building. Having said that, what does a green building do for a layman, right? Or for an office, or for a home, for a school, or for a mall, or for a hotel. So primarily saves, power and water, right? So if you obviously save power, you're going to draw less power from a coal-based power plant, and you're going to contribute a bit to lowering of global warming. And obviously, when you use less water with all kinds of there's a sewage treatment plant, rainwater harvesting, dual flushing system, you're going to draw less water from a natural resource, and that also is going to help in preservation of natural resources. So I guess India as a country wants to achieve a certain GDP growth, and there's bound to be a lot of construction which is happening and is going to happen, and whether we like it or not. So might as well construct buildings which draw less power and water and do your bit. As far as customers giving a premium for green buildings, in India it's still not very prevalent. Unfortunately, whether I would lease my IT special economic zones to a company, or I would sell a green home. I guess people still, there's a long way to go in terms of as far as a green home goes, in terms of their understanding the fact that they are actually the society is going to save power and water when they move into a green home. The IT customers to whom which we primarily deal with, and they have their principles in Europe and the US, and they kind of understand the fact that there is a lower operating cost on the table for them in terms of moving into a green office. So yes, so as a developer, we've come a long way from 2007, when the cost of constructing green building was as high as 13%, and right now we hardly look at a cost of 1.5 to 2%, because obviously our base building specifications were always higher. We were always providing a sewage treatment plant. We were doing rainwater harvesting. We were looking at energy cost, and we've done a lot of work with the Clinton Climate Foundation, where President Clinton, we did 2 large projects. The first in Asia, in greening non-green buildings, namely the Inorbit Mall at Malad and the Renaissance Hotel at Hawaii. So that's how it kind of pans out, depending on the billions of square feet of green construction which are going on right now in the country.
It's great to see that K-Raja has remained on track in terms of sustainability, and they are recognized as a sustainable developer. And of course, that I'm sure translates in some ways to better revenues for the organization and better workplaces for the occupiers who are there. So I think it's just a matter of time. There is more awareness which is coming in, thanks to the green rating systems, and maybe even architects giving customers the advice on the benefits of the green, so to say, construction and building. But I see also there's an important point you brought out. The cost of building green has actually come down significantly. So that also, I think, is going to add to the overall, I would say, awareness of the green sustainable construction. And just sticking on that point, Azam, your company Green, you are into supplying green building materials. So you go to a lot of customers, and I'm sure the question will come about cost as well to you. So from a materials supplier point of view, how are you seeing this trend? Are you seeing more developers looking at a green, so to say, supply chain as well in India? And maybe some references points of, because it's a global company that you have, and so how is it seen in international markets?
So Anish, I will talk about 2 viewpoints primarily here. Okay, so one is that how technology in the last few years have enabled us to develop construction chemicals more sustainably, and what kind of impact it has, for example, on the consumption of natural resources, consumption of cement, consumption of aggregate, and so on, right? So, pinpointing and being very, very focused to the segment of, let's say, adhesives or cementitious waterproofing, right? So a few years ago, they were 10 to 15 years ago, primarily there is cement, aggregate, and petroleum byproduct. And today there is cement, aggregate, and, some specialty polymers. You have acetate, cellulose, etc. Now, what that allows you is to, in a very small thickness, let's say from 3 to 7 mm, build what you would otherwise build in, a thickness of 20 millimeters, right? products like adhesives or also flooring products, screeds, they consume very little water. So that's where, we're talking about, so that's an important aspect of green building. We talk about less consumption during construction, less consumption during operation, and less energy consumption, of course, is something that, our product do not fall in that ambit yet. Okay. That being said, so there are these kind of advantages where you tremendously reduce the use of water. There are many areas in Mumbai or in India where the water is not really readily available, right? So builders are actually going ahead and asking us, do you do ready mix screed, which can be used for us to, with a very small quantity of water, next day within 24 hours, I'm going to be ready and I can do tile it over, right? So that creates definitely, a demand. The answer also lies in overall cost of, acquisition. For example, overall cost of, building. If these kind of construction chemical get utilized during the design phase of the building, what you're looking at definitely is a rate of maintenance which is much higher. So as opposed to regular cement and aggregate based treatment of surfaces or application of tiles or waterproofing, what we're talking about is in case construction chemical is used, we're looking at 10 to 15 years minimum age of building, and in case of better product, it could be even higher. So not a lot of maintenance is required over a period of time, right? So overall cost of acquisition remains low. There's one more very interesting point. I'd like to, isolate a little bit the myth that is always connected with building green and building expensive, right? So there are some technologies, for example, if you look at a solvent-based product or a water-based product, a water-based product gives you a tremendous advantage when it comes to the people who are actually using those products, applying, and then in terms of VOC emissions later on in applied spaces. Right now, if we build water-based polyurethane products for waterproofing of spaces, they are cheaper. So this is a technology which is cheaper. So this is one category of product. If you look at single component cementitious material for waterproofing, which is a technology that we as a manufacturer focus a lot on. So it allows you to cut out all the drums that goes together with your powder, where you have the liquid which has to be mixed together and applied on site, right? So you cut out all those drums. You have a single component with dried polymer, and if you have the right approach and the right R&D capability, you can make this product to be extremely highly workable and give them a level of consumption which is very high, right? So you're talking about, yes, the per kg cost of formulation which goes up, but per square cost of formulation that comes down. Right, so there are also these kind of point that must be highlighted, and we try our best, as manufacturers of construction chemicals, to highlight these points to our customer, our decision maker, that we need to look at on one side, what is the advantage of using sustainable, but we also need to see the kind of efficiency that building sustainable has created. It doesn't come easy, so you need to have a deep approach, and the paradigm based on reduce, recycle, and reuse is something that you must keep on the top of your mind when you go about product development. But as long as you can do that and you focus on deep R&D, deep level of research and development, I think you can definitely come out with products which gives advantage in some cases also in terms of economies of material.
I think the fact that you have a plant in India means that customers are willing to spend more to, in the long run, have a better product and a lower cost product. But initially, definitely are keen to spend more. And it's great that you're actually producing in India. There are a lot of good technologies, but people are not producing in India. So I think appreciate that from the overall perspective of the government as well. So that's one, is that technology in terms of the hard technology, technology of the materials and everything. But Prashant, you're talking about futuristic. I wouldn't say futuristic. Actually, it should be here. Biomimicry. It is conceptual and all, but no, I think discussion these days is complete without talking about technology, which is the digital technology. So, how are you, from a, I would say not directly into the core construction industry, but as an outsider who's seeing it as overall view, how are you seeing this digital construction tech that they call affecting the way construction is happening? Now, I'll just give you an example. One of the projects that we are working on, safety has always been a concern for everybody, and especially multinational companies, they place a lot of premium on that. So what we've done is we put a camera at a few strategic locations. It's got some AI built software, and it keeps on monitoring if there are any unsafe practices and gives an alert. so you don't have to have a safety inspector going all around. So that's really technology helping in making building construction safer as well as faster. So just like to hear your thoughts in terms of how do you think that digital tech is likely to impact the construction ecosystem?
Yeah, actually, I'm so glad I have such an eminent panel here, and I think your voices can reach the policy space. So one of the things which is critical is that the biological information is completely missing. The construction as well as the design industry doesn't know, and they are in such a day-to-day, running of meeting their tasks that they can't be expected to do their own research. They can't be expected to know that, okay, I'm disturbing this site. So what has been suggested is, like we have GPS, GIS, to create a BIS. BIS is a biological information system, which would be geographical. And the interesting thing is most of this biological data exists. It exists in biological and agricultural sciences. If there was a way to aggregate it in a usable form to the construction and the architects, so that all they have to do it, they don't have to get into the research. That's not their job. But they need usable guidelines that, okay, I have this site. Are there any biological indicators I need to restore, I need to take care of? And that should be available. So if a BIS system, and this is not a new idea, I think Singapore is investing into it, and in various new names, other countries are investing. If this additional layer, which is basically giving you that these are the life support systems, biological, that you will need to restore, or at least you know. I think that's where digital technology can be a huge, huge advantage to us. In fact, I would strongly say, I'm on the outside, but as an outside, I say, when everybody is developed, we are starting Make in India and we are starting smart cities. So do you want to make the Europe of 20 years ago, or here's an opportunity to do things right? So that would mean the courage of investing into a bit of imagination. So even if 2% of some budget is allocated to develop these kind of things, I think at the operational level, it comes to budgeting. I've been teaching biomimicry using my own funds. So that's, so that's the way somehow our mind has been colonized. Sorry for saying that, but I think we need to be real. That
think differently.
Yeah, think differently and have a mindset of investing in high risk research, place-based research. Otherwise, we can be surprised by
something which is already 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I always did it. I had a cycle to buy milk. You gifted me a plane. Now I'm using the plane to buy milk because my imagination was not developed. So my fear is that we are not developing the imagination of our design and engineering. I go to a lot of colleges to teach, and technology is way ahead. So they really don't know what to do with this technology. So I would say let's invest in imagination, and this BIS is a ready thing. It should be done. That's
interesting. I think there must be a lot of architects in the delegates, and hopefully they will go back and do some Google searches on that. But coming to Shabir again, from a construction companies, from a developer's point of view, how are you seeing construction tech really changing the way construction happens? You seeing some inroads right now?
Yes, I mean there have been various new inputs which have happened in the last 10 years in terms of what construction methodology was being used in our country. It's around 15 years back. A lot of developers have adapted to, like, we've used recyclable aluminum formwork systems. We've used drones to look at how we can, look at movement of construction material. We're looking at whether each of our construction machinery can be stamped with a barcode. We are also looking at various other systems in form of tunnel formwork. Having said that, from a sustainable point of view, there is always a business element to anything that will get successful. Otherwise, a lot of these ideas, unfortunately, don't take off, and then they lie in books and lectures. Having said that, it all boils down to the fact that green makes business sense. So unless and until we develop something which makes business sense, whether it's a technology, whether it's a new new idea of nature, it's not going to have a mass appeal in terms of how things will go. Things have evolved for a lot of us in the sustainable industry because there has been adaptation. Unfortunately, the adaptation has come from my customers whose principals are in Europe and the US. So if I have IT customers, who are Fortune 500 or MNC companies, whether it's an Accenture or it's a Microsoft, it's a Facebook, they do not want to move into a non-green building, or they do not want to adopt practices within their office which are not sustainable. So these companies in Europe and US have evolved in ensuring that they do their bit in terms of the lowering of global warming. Indian companies are adopting. I don't blame the Indian companies because obviously there is the European and the US have a cost advantage in terms of their euro and dollar, and Indian companies which are big and which are a minuscule of say up to 5% are actually looking at adopting these kind of new technologies.
So I think technology will bring about change. We're seeing it all around us. And before we kind of wrap up the session and then maybe take a few questions, Ashokji, during the discussions prior to the this session, you had mentioned about how building envelopes are just so routine and they're not adaptable. So it'll be great to hear you shared something about how the building envelopes can be more adaptive. So that's a new technology, still not in on the ground, but it'll be good to hear about what the future can hold.
No, I think this is absolutely a case for architects, engineers, building scientists, material scientists, and Prashant and his gang in the biomimicry department coming together to ask this question. Why is it that building skins, what we clothe the building with on the outside, does not change itself according to the climate? Why is it that it doesn't do so? And that's exactly what nature would do. And nature has learned how to do it. And we know some of the principles of how it actually works. But we have been able to design the assembly of materials and so on, which enable you to do that. So that's the building skin itself. And I remember Azam was also mentioning the use of non-cementitious plasters and so on, so that they can absorb some of the some gases or whatever, some elements from the internal atmosphere to purify the air. They also become hygroscopic flywheels, so that they maintain the humidity levels inside within certain range. They help you to do that. So those are breathing materials. So you can have breathing external envelopes which can do that. You can have materials that can dry out and become wet and so on, increase their insulation and reduce their insulation depending on the season, okay? And I think we probably are on the verge of finding something like this. And I think we can do that in our own country from first principles. We don't have to necessarily wait for somebody in the United States or in Europe to find the way, and we should come later on to buy it from them. I think that's possible. Second area is in the design of windows, openings and shading systems outside of windows. For some very strange reason, completely beyond my understanding, what used to be a standard thing that you had this louvered window all along the coast, whether it is in Calcutta or in Mumbai or Chennai or wherever, all along, you had this louvered window which you could close during the daytime and let the air come in, but you'll be shaded completely, and you can open during the evenings, etc. Standard thing. It's been thrown out of the window. Okay, it's gone out. And what have we got? We got big glass in its place. So I think, again, intelligent devices which are very easy to modulate, whether from inside or automatically, to respond to the way the sun falls on the window and how the air or the breeze can move in and out of the building is something else where you can look at biomimicry as the inspiration and technology as an inbuilt feedback loop that drive the system of opening, shutting, shading, and getting the access to the light and sun. Definitely doable. And I completely support Prashant. We should give him a $10 billion grant immediately. And here are 2 projects that he can take on.
1 million will do.
If you ask for 10, you'll get 1.
No, I think that's the experience you bring in, Ashokji, that you ask for 10 and you get 1.
Yes, exactly.
But I think is these are really, while they seem very futuristic ideas and you see them in science fiction movies, but with people thinking about it now and you know, like yourselves and architects and the rating system, and everybody is going to start talking about these and demanding these, I'm sure they'll not be very far, or at least as far as we think they'll in the future. So I'm optimistic to see that we will see these things sooner rather than later.
I do want to emphasize one thing. Everything, for instance, in the rating systems or in the regulations and bylaws and so on, and much of policy that you see, or even in the discourse across the world, they say all the technologies are there. You only need legal systems, information, and finance to make it happen. But let me tell you, there's a lot of innovation still to be done. And I think we really need to orient ourselves towards the possibilities of innovation.
Sure. So I think we've had some really nice discussions, and I'm sure Savio's team has taken some pointers, and we'll see how we can use them somewhere, at least to share with the delegates where we can. So we're coming to an end. I think one quick round across everybody in terms of just one idea that you think should be considered or should be one of the approaches to take in the new construction ecosystem centered around sustainability. So maybe starting with you, Azam, one strong idea that you think we should all look at.
Anish, I would not say an idea, but I would rather say a paradigm. So for me, it will be willingness to try new things, having the courage to try new things, because amazing results come out if you get behind a cause. And I totally agree with architect Ashok ji, is that, you know, India is very resourceful. There is everything available. It is in fashion to say that things, you know, raw material supplies is not very, very good in India. It's not well developed. But once you get behind a cause and once you have the courage to do things differently, you get results in India. So I would say that one thing to take away is to try and keep on, you know, having the willingness and the courage to do things and try out new things. And that's the way to go forward.
Thanks. That's, you know, try out new things, have the courage to try out new things. And Prashant, you're somebody who's already got the courage in trying out new things. And you already gave your one big idea about what would nature do, but anything else you'd like us to take away from this or think about?
I would suggest 2 things. One is, of course, you know, to make it a habit to say what would nature do here. Second is, I think, some kind of a continuous learning program for construction industry professionals, because people get stuck and they don't feel current in their thinking, and that could lead to insecurity. I'm going to, since I'm an outsider, let me say, and insecurity and fear are big things. It's better to talk about it and deal with it. So how do we keep people current? So if there is a continuous learning, you know, something which can be collaboratively done so that there is collective learning and upgrading of the system, then change is, I would think, easier.
Thank you.
Totally agree.
Shabir, what would you like us to really focus on from your perspective?
So I have 2 things. Obviously, in the COVID scenario, the mantra is touchless. So anything which is we are able to create a technology or a system which results in, you know, in whether it's a touchless operation of the office or touchless for people staying in a home. In a non-COVID scenario, obviously our emphasis as a company has to be, you know, what is outdoor, you know, and visible is what should be visible when somebody is working inside an office, whether it's an outdoor space or it's a local amenity outside. That's something which we focus on in both in terms of a green home and a green office.
Thanks, and that's a very powerful way to connect people to nature, I think, and then get them to think on sustainability. Sanjay, from not as a regulator, I would say, or as from GREA, but as a sustainability professional and somebody who's working in the framework system, what's your one takeaway for the audience?
So, to my mind, I think we should break away from the shackles of that first cost uniqueness. That's really hindering the growth of sustainable buildings. So that's one. And the second thing is that let's empower the consumer for informed decisions and provide as much information that we can so that they can take informed decisions. And we've seen that in the B star labeling program, how there has been a paradigm shift into, decision making as far as energy efficient appliances is concerned. Likewise, I think we need to empower the consumer, because at the end of it, the consumer needs to really drive up the demand. So I think these are my 2 points that I would like to leave.
Yes, I think the second part about empowering the consumer through knowledge, it's worked phenomenally for the star rating system, and maybe the time is there for even the construction sector. And Ashokji, from your side, one takeaway for all of us?
Yeah, I think two things is building upon what Sanjay just said about empowering the consumer. Building upon that is that I think what whether it is commercial buildings or it is residential buildings, by and large, the consumer doesn't know that it is simple and easy to design buildings that are relatively comfortable without resorting to so much air conditioning. The consumer simply doesn't know it. The consumer also doesn't know that by putting in a whole lot of glass, either you have to spend a whole lot of money to counter the effect of that glass, or you're going to make yourself extremely uncomfortable. The consumer thinks that it is only the climate, it's not the building that's at fault. So I think the first thing in terms of empowering for residential buildings as much for commercial buildings, consumer must now begin to say, I'm not buying if you're not giving me external shading. I'm not buying if you're not giving me an insulated roof. I'm not buying if you're giving me an all concrete wall. I'm not buying. They must know that it is a matter of design and they must demand it. I think that's extremely important. That's the way I would empower the consumer. The second thing I want to emphasize is that, we actually have three worlds in our country. We have a 5% world, which is connected to the European client and the USA client, who are very well informed, and they ask for the best world standards and so on and so forth. There is the people that, half the population at the very bottom, who are suffering from terrible environmental distress, and they're going to suffer from it more and more. And then you have an in-between, which is the middle class, which wants to look like and be like the 5%. That's what we are. I think that somewhere along the line, we need to do something about the middle classes to realize that you need to make, as Sanjay said, informed lifestyle choices. As Prashant would say, you need to make informed lifestyle choices about how you want to build your society and your quality of life. And this is a different kind of a dialogue, but we need to build that dialogue. And I think from a designer's point of view, people who are engaged with the built environment, as so many professions engaged with the built environment, this is a common dialogue that they should have with the middle class user of built spaces.
So I think building on what Sanjay said, one is of course empowering the consumers through awareness, but I think it's what you're saying is it's more important for the consumers themselves to be more aware and demand, I would say, sustainable construction, sustainable building, sustainable. So I think that's another counterpoint, and that's where all of us, we're all consumers in a way, have to take that thing. So I think you're saying something? Yes, Sanjay.
Yeah, so it's just that, Consumer will start demanding only when we put out information out in the open source. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, they will really, it's like, yeah. So it's a vicious circle. And in Terry, what we are doing, we are trying, through the Mahindra Terry Center of Excellence, we are trying to put as much information on, the thermal conductivity of material out in the public domain for people to understand that why are we talking about sustainable building material? Why are we talking about technologies that could help you to treat your effluent water so that you move towards zero discharge sites. That's what we are aiming to. So all the research we are doing is currently in that area. Let's move towards zero discharge sites so that there is no, we don't get away from this, you move away from just taking away from the environment. And yeah, so.
I think we're all, this is an extremely passionate panel on sustainability. Everybody is really passionate about, being closer to nature and reducing the impact. So I think we've had some good deliberations, and there are a few questions. Only we don't have too much time, but it's very nice to see there's one engineering student who's a pre-final year student who's got a question saying that what role can we play towards green buildings and biomimicry designs? So it's good, while there are a couple of others, but this I thought is good that we have some young people asking questions. So Prashant, that's your question to answer, I think.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that you're asking that question. So the first thing is to, as I said, ask with the question, what would nature do here? So, and there is a lot of free resources of the biomimicry methodology. So it would be a good idea to explore, and in this short time, what I could suggest, start reading across disciplines. Please do not restrict yourself to your own engineering silo to start having conversation with biological. This might be a little difficult, but I'll tell you how a simple way of doing it. So if you are doing, say, thermoregulation, and you find that there is an ant in Sahara which is able to run for 1 kilometer, that's amazing. At least ask the biologist, how does the ant do that? So this is the first way. Start with curious questions, that how is the ant able to do it? How is this, how is in Western Ghats, this soil is not getting eroded in this termite mound? So these questions to a biologist could be a start. There's always a start. And then, as we go deeper, our learning will grow. That's what I can offer. All of you are welcome to write to me, and I can, more detailed answers, but that's an easy way to start on this journey.
Thank you so much, Prashant. And I just maybe want to personally thank all the panelists for really sharing your views. And I think more importantly, what I at least take out is that, when others see the passion that some people bring in on a particular cause, hopefully it spreads all around. I'm sure the people around you, yes, it is there, but on a panel like this, where we had like 200 participants, they're hearing industry experts talk very passionately about sustainability, about the need to do something different. And I'm sure this will trickle down to the people who are actually on the ground doing things differently. So really, thank you all for sharing your ideas and putting across very, very impactful insights as well. So I'll hand over to Savio maybe just to close the session.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anish, for moderating this and giving it the desired need. Because we all understand the importance of climate change, of sustainability, and it was rightly put across by all the eminent panelists. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for taking time out for this wonderful session. This is just the first masterclass. There'll be a lot more intriguing sessions. Our mission is at ACETECH is to spread awareness, is to ensure what the right thought leadership goals, which all of you have put across in this session, to be met by every individual and to understand the importance as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the audience as well. We look forward to our future webinars. Thank you all. Great to have you. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
of course,
you.
thanks to Ecological and Azam for the sponsorship as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.